Good morning. We are going to be reading out of the Dear America book, Across the Wide and Lonesome Prairie. We're trying to learn about the Oregon Trail and what the life was like of those that were trying to go west. It was not an easy life. There so far has been heartbreak, there's been death, there's been accidents, there's been so much drama, there's been thievery. Man, there's so much been going on. This family originally started in, let me make sure, I don't want to tell you wrong, Boonesville, Missouri. Have you heard of Missouri? This diary, I apologize. So we're reading a diary, a journal. So I'll read it exactly how it's on here. So they would call it Missouri. We call it Missouri now. Now some people still call it Missouri, but it's Missouri. So they started in Boonesville, Missouri. They went up. I'm sorry. I have a hard time doing this upside down. So they went up to the Missouri River. They got on a steamboat and up through the Missouri River to Independence, where the Star is. They got off at the Star at Independence. They bought everything they needed. They did have some of their own belongings, like their grandma's special quilts or some of those special things. Their particular family had death in their family the year before from swamp fever, which I don't know a lot about swamp fever, so I should probably research that. I need to think about that. If you don't know a lot about swamp fever, maybe you should research that. So they had death in their family. That's why they have decided they want to go west. They want to have a fresh start. I'm sorry, I have a little frog in my throat. So here they bought their wagon, their oxen, but they waited until it was time, in their opinion, when they needed to go west. They waited until April to go west. Their aunt and uncle decided to go with them as well. So they've traveled all the way to Chimney Rock. So I'm going to get in close so you can see that. They have traveled from Independence, Missouri to Chimney Rock. Now, was that the whole time? Is that all the way to the Star over here? No way. Man, they still have a long way to go. They've had so many issues. Now, the last time we talked, or they were on here, poor Hattie, the narrator, she was getting lonesome for home because there wasn't very many trees and it wasn't like home at all. I'm sorry, maybe I need to get a drink. I haven't had enough coffee this morning. Maybe that's what my problem is. This author is Christiana Gregory, and I just love Dear America Diaries. So if you have not ever read one, you need to. They're so good. Okay, so we're gonna get going. If you're kind of following along with us, we are on page 64 today, and we're at Scotts Bluff. And I was trying to look on my map where Scotts Bluff is, and I don't see it on my map. So we're gonna just keep going. I have never seen a real castle, but today we passed what Pa says looks like one. On the side of the trail, high above us, rose a sharp wall of stone called Scotts Bluff. Jake wanted to climb in it when he saw some older boys trying, but Ma held his shirt and said no. The bluff hugs the river so close we had to steer the wagon aside and pull around it. Up a rocky ridge, Tall Joe said this place was named after a fur trader, Hiram Scott, who got sick and was abandoned by his companions. He crawled 60 miles trying to find them. When the trappers came this way again, they found his skeleton and what was left of his boots right here. This morning, after we were on the trail for an hour, a boy playing with his father's gun accidentally shot our front oxen in the head. Oh no, a boy shot their oxen. Now we've learned, my students learned, and I was so sad that we couldn't do this anymore. We learned that we, as we were trying to do the Oregon Trail game, which if any of you parents are listening, you have probably played the Oregon Trail game just like I did when I was in school. But it was saying that you needed 3 yokes to make the trail, and each yoke you needed 2 oxen. So if one of those oxen was gone, what's going to happen? How are they going to go? It dropped dead so quick, the ones behind stumbled on it, and what a tangled of hooves and harnesses. Pa was so mad he stormed over to the boy, grabbed the gun, and threw it in the river. You could have killed one of my children, young man. I have never seen Pa so red in the face. I ran to Jake and Benny, even though I knew they were safe, and gathered them so me like I was an old hen. Have you ever seen an old hen? What's a hen? It's a chicken, but it's not just a chicken, right? It's a chicken that has chicklings. I'm sorry if you can hear my kiddos upstairs. They're having breakfast today. She was trying to protect her little chicklings, right? Her brothers are her chicklings. I don't know if that's the correct term, so I apologize. That boy made me so mad that after supper, I marched over and kicked him hard in the leg. Twice. Now, should she have kicked them? She should have probably used her words, right? But I can understand of being so scared and angry for thinking about the life of my brother and sister and my kiddos and my students. I might want to go kick someone too. Although I probably shouldn't. 60 miles until we reached Fort Laramie. 4 days if we push. Ooh. So they are 4 days. They were at Chimney Rock, which is here. Ooh, no. Chimney Rock is here. Yeah. So here's Fort Laramie. So they're 4 days away from Fort Laramie. Uh-oh. Later, thunder and lightning with heavy winds, rain turned to sleet, then hail. I scolded Jake for throwing hailstones at another boy who ran to his mama, crying. Fort Laramie. When Fort Laramie... I was trying to tell you... Not today, I didn't tell you about it today. At the very beginning of this diary, you would see where it would be like April, March, April, the exact day. But we don't have that anymore. Here she was saying it's about 4 days away, then later, and then Fort Laramie. So we can decide that 4 days later is about here. We still don't know what day that is, but we can know that she's not writing every single day. When Fort Laramie drew into sight, I felt shaky. Indians were camped everywhere, but I looked at them careful and did not see any trouble brewing. they was mostly family, seemed like. Tall Joe said, "We're now in the middle of Sioux country, and this is the biggest trading post around. It's built from logs and is owned by American Fur Company. There are dozens of trappers and mountain men dressed in beaded leather and skins and living in teepees. Many seem to be married to Indian women, for there are half-breed children playing among the tents. We're staying for 2 nights and 1 full day so folks can make repairs on wagons and buy supplies. A Frenchman runs this place." I wonder if it will tell us what the Frenchman's name is, or if you would have a chance to look at if you could research about Fort Laramie. Who was the Frenchman that owned it? Who ran that place? That would be a great thing to research today. Since we're stopping and pausing, it said that they're at a trading company. What is a trade? It said there's dozens of trappers and mountain men. It also said it's the biggest trading post. But it also said later we're staying for 2 nights and 1 full day so folks can make repairs and buy supplies. So what do you think trading means? That's kind of confusing to me because I thought I knew what trading meant. But now when I put all of that together, do I know what that means? Can I tell you what I think it means? So it was telling us that there are dozens of trappers and mountain men dressed in beaded leather and skins living in teepees. So those people are the people that come. They trap the fur, the animals, and they get the fur and the leather. They make the leather. They don't make it, but they bring the leather and they trade for it. So they're bringing that. They're getting something in return. That's the trading part there. They take the fur and leather to the trading post and they get something in return. Now, I'm not positive right now what they might get in return. Maybe they get money in return. Maybe they get weapons. Maybe they get, I don't know, food. I don't know what they might get. Now, the buying part, the people coming west are going to that same place, and they are buying things that they need. Now, maybe they do trade something. I don't know. They may trade something, but that part was kind of a little bit confusing. So I wanted to make that a little bit clear to you because I know some of my 3rd graders already know what trading means, and that is a little bit confusing. So, way on the other side of the river, we can see Brigham Young's camp. Who's Brigham Young? We've heard that name several times, although we haven't met Brigham Young. Do you remember who Brigham Young is? Brigham Young is that camp of Mormons that stayed on the other side of the Platte River. They've not met them. Now, some of the people were curious about meeting them. Now, Pa was not curious about meeting them because they have a different religion than them. So he was like, no, I don't want any part of that. The trail, such as it ends, so they must cross to our side. Oh, so now they may have a chance to. The Frenchman has a flatboat. For $15, he'll ferry their wagons across. $15 is a fortune, but Pa says the river is deeper here, so it's probably worth it for them to pay. Oh, I wonder if they wish they would have crossed it whenever they could have. Do you remember when they were just playing in that river and they were running back and forth from it? We were already on the trail again before the Mormons had crossed over, so I reckon they'll be traveling in our dust. There are signposts every few miles. These are messages written on pieces of board stuck on the sand. Also, there are buffalo skulls with writing on them. Some notes are impossible to read because the sun has bleached out the ink or rain has smeared it. There are warnings of bad weather, rattlesnakes, and danger. This one, Willie Henderson and 2 others died here June 1846, buffalo stampede. What's a buffalo stampede? Do you remember in our previous reading, Hattie said, she asked Tall Joe, who is their guide, she said, why is that mountain moving? Why is that hill moving? Or she said, it looks like that hill has been burnt. Why is it burnt? And he said, that's not, the hill is not burnt. That's the buffalo. There were millions and millions of buffalo. So what is a stampede? Do you know what a stampede is? My school, we are called North Nottoway Mustangs. And one of our things we like to say is lead the stampede. So we want to be good leaders, right? So we want to be the people leading. We want to be the front of that stampede. Now, if I would falter, and I would fall, and I would get in front of that stampede, and I would stop, and I would get ran over, I could get hurt, right? It sounds like these guys got ran over by a bunch of buffalo and they died. How scary. Early June. Oh, so we know it's June. We don't know how early. Maybe it's June 1st. Maybe it's June 5th. Maybe it's June 15th. That would be like mid-June. So hopefully it's like between June 1st and June 15th. We don't know for sure. Aunt June, so she has an aunt named June, feels poorly. Do you remember why Aunt June might be feeling poorly? Yeah, because she's expecting. She's expecting a baby. Ma says it's just weariness. She needs to rest and drink more water. I ask when her baby will be born because she walks slower and her middle is bigger by the day it seems. Soon, Hattie, in a few weeks. Mr. Lewis's mules are gone sometime in the night. They were stolen from their pickets, their ropes cut. Who has horses or mules at their house? I do not, but I used to. So I know that if I was to have my horse tied up, there would be 2 reasons why my horse could get loose. One reason would be if I didn't have it tied right. I'm thinking they're doing this, they're kind of practiced up on how to tie it, right? Another reason would be if someone wanted to take my horse and they would cut it. Uh-oh. So someone has taken their their mules. Engines. Oh, who remembers what the word engines means? Isn't it engine? Like, I'm going to my car and I'm getting my engine? No. They, like an Indian, we use the words Native American, but they used to also call them engines. I'm going to show you that word here because it's even spelled differently. engines. He said, shaking his head with worry, we gave him one of our oxen now. We have 4. Oh, so remember, one died because that kid was playing with a gun. Don't ever play with guns. I should have said that before. Don't ever play with guns. So sad. Uncle Tim. Oh, so they one died and now they've given their other one away. So they only have 4. Uncle Tim did also. So now Mr. Lewis has a team of 2. Whew, that was so nice of them. The Mormons passed us today while we were nooning. I wonder, what does nooning mean? If I think about that, I'm going to take the word, the suffix ing off. That's the ending of a word, and I'm just going to look at my base word noon. My base word noon. I know what that is. Do you know what the word noon means? It's the middle of the day. What do I do at the middle of the day? I eat. So the action, and if I have ing, so the action of middle of the day, I like to eat. So I bet they're having lunch, or they're resting at that time. They're eating lunch and resting, maybe. Oh, sorry, Marmalade's barking. Tall Joe pointed out Brigham Young on horseback. He was wearing a black hat. He lifted his arm to wave, then galloped ahead. Pepper and I stood on our own wagon seat and shaded our eyes, hoping to see the Mormon children, but we saw only dust. Someone said that just one wife is with him. All the others are back in Illinois. Okay, we're going to read one more section. Register Cliff. The trail goes through limestone, which is soft when wet. Have you ever experienced limestone before? It is soft when it's wet. Pepper and I carved our names into a boulder by the side of the road using a sharp stone. Our hands grew tired, so we didn't spell out our full names or our hometowns. During the long, hot hours of the day, many of the men driving wagons doze. Their reins in hand is a wonder. None have fallen off their seats. Paul looks wore out. Yesterday, a wasp stung him on the neck, and it has swollen up. Ma keeps dabbing mud on it, but it is still sore and red. We are tired by nightfall. We roll into our blankets and stretch out on the hard ground. Lately, not using tents, it means one less thing to unpack and repack every day. The breeze is cool on my face. How I wish I could keep my eyes open long enough to study the stars, but suddenly it is morning. The bugle has sounded and the campfire smell of fresh coffee. Pepper told me a secret last night. We were setting up a tent to share with little Holly and Laurel, for there was thunder and the smell of rain. It was pitch black, no moon or stars. Every minute or so a sheet of lightning flashed in the west, so bright we could see the whole prairie. The way it is when someone holds up a lantern in a barn. For 2 full seconds we could see each other. Then it was dark again. After we tucked ourselves into blankets, Holly and Laurel already asleep between us, Pepper whispered, Gideon has asked me to marry him. And I said yes. Tell me what you think, Hattie. Well, Pepper, I'm really happy for you. But what I didn't tell her was I was filled with envy. How I wanted to have someone love me too. If she is 14 and old enough to marry, then I, at 13, am old enough to fall in love. We whispered until the rain began hitting our tent, and we could no longer hear one another. It rained all night. Pepper and I moved close and held the little girls against us so they couldn't be cold. Thunder rocked the ground as if horses were running by. Water seeped under our tent and up into our blankets. I did not sleep a wink on account of being wet and chilled. The next day, wet blankets were hung to dry inside the wagons and outside, pinned to the canvas. They soon were so full of trail dust that it was a chore to shake the mud loose. Ew. Tall Joe. Oh, I want to pause for a second. Can you imagine being 14 and having someone ask you to marry you and it be like, okay? We're not old enough to do that now. That is like a whole different world than what we're used to, isn't it? Now, like 20, 30, that's when we might think about getting married. 30, 40. Like not like 14. That is insane to me. Okay. Tall Joe says last night was just a dribble, nothing compared to the heavy rains he's seen in years past. So we should shut up and count ourselves lucky. When word spread that Gideon and Pepper planned to marry, the women began putting together a wedding chest for them. Aunt June emptied one of her trunks and began folding and packing gifts that folks brought. A beautiful down quilt came from one family. There was a bed sheets and linens and tarps and lanterns and a Dutch oven and an axe and a kettle. I gave her my tin of Babbitt's powder soap. One lady brought over her own lace nightgown and a petticoat never worn that she'd been saving to wear once she got to Oregon. May as well have a bride enjoy them now. She said, Oregon is a long way off and who knows what will happen between now and then. Pepper and Gideon take long walks in the evening, then appear in time for the last dance. They hold hands until the fire is low. She's late crawling into bed and wakes up whispering in my ear, Hattie, for a while we watch the stars and talk, wonder about the mysteries of marriage. But I worry. Will she still be my friend? Will we live next door to each other like we planned? Later, I'm ashamed of myself. Today, this is the part that I don't like that she says. Don't talk like her. Today, the fat lady came over to visit, but Ma was down by the creek. I was figuring on how to act busy when the lady said, Hello, honey. I made some taffy for you to share with your brothers. Here you go. She handed me the candy wrapped in oilcloth. That was so sweet of her. She smiled at me so kindly I felt ashamed that I had avoided her. So right quick I invited her to tea, recollecting Aunt June having told me to be hospitable. While the kettle was set over the fire to boil, the lady went to her wagon and came back with her husband riding on her wide shoulders. They introduced themselves as Mr. and Mrs. Big. Crossed my mind, I did not laugh at their name. Mrs. Big said she has to drive the wagon on account of her husband being crippled. He sits next to her to keep her company, and now I recall seeing them talk and laugh together, hour after hour like old friends, because he has no legs. The trail is so rough, he ties himself to the bench so he won't bounce off. She said that a few years ago he was trampled by horses from a runaway wagon and his crushed legs had to be amputated. Do you know what amputated means? We probably have heard of that before. Amputated means they had to cut his legs off. And a lot of times they have to do that to be able to save their life. If they cut their legs off for some reason, Like there might be infection, or there's various reasons. I am not a doctor. I'm a teacher, right? But there's various reasons why they would have to do that. But poor man, I've decided they are the two of the nicest folks I've ever did meet, and I will strike anyone who makes fun of them, or the fact that their name describes her. I am so glad I kept my first opinions to myself. If Pepper knew how unkind I can be, I would melt from shame. Oh, I am so glad that she has changed her mind, and she has, became a much better person about it. Oh, we're almost to a different section, so I want to keep reading. I was ready to stop. Later, when Mrs. Big heard that Pepper is to be married, she dug in her trunk and pulled out one of her lace tablecloths. She marched over to our camp, pulling a cart where Mr. Big sits like he's riding a little train. She held the lace up to Pepper and said, "Honey, I'm going to make you the prettiest wedding dress you'll ever set your eyes on." And she did. For 5 evenings, Mrs. Big sewed and cut and measured until she had a creamy white dress with long sleeves and a bow that ties at her waist. Mr. Big sat beside her in the cart sewing too. He made a lacy overskirt from the curtains that had hung in their parlor back in Missouri. Oh my gracious! That is the sweetest thing ever. Finally, we gathered by the wagon and held up blankets to make a private room. Pepper carefully stepped into the dress. As her mother buttoned up the back, the ladies caught their breaths. She looked so beautiful. The wedding is planned for when we arrive in Independence Rock a few days away. A hot afternoon. Mrs. Anderson came over this morning as we were packing up the breakfast plates. She looked very thin, but there's more color to her cheeks. I can hardly look at her without wanting to cry for Cassia. Who remembers who Cassia is? Oh, poor Cassia. Was the little girl that had the bite of... Oh, I'm going to forget it. Hemslock that Hattie actually picked and 3 people died from. Phew. She said to Ma, "It was so warm last night, I think I left my shawl by your fire. Have you seen it, Augusta?" Together they looked under the wagon by the crates and stools, then in Aunt June's wagon. I remember it was pretty blue shawl with fringe. We looked and looked. Wade is feeling good enough to dance, but when the fiddlers started up, he asked another girl. I was so upset I ran outside the circle where it was dark. For a long time, I sat in the dirt where no one could see me watching the dancers. I felt so alone. I want someone to love me the way Gideon loves Pepper. Aw, poor Patty. Okay, this is all we're going to do for today. If you were reading with us, we are ending on page 73. I am so glad that you were able to read with us. We, so far, have started we started down here, but Independence Rock, they have traveled on the Platte River, by the Platte River, all the way to Chimney Rock, and for Fort Laramie, and they are almost to Independence Rock. Okay, we will, I will start this back up tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.